Let's go! We're breaking down LSU's toughest opponents, and it's not Alabama, even though the ESPN projection has Alabama as LSU's only loss on the season. I'll explain why the Crimson Tide is not the toughest opponent on LSU's schedule. Please give me a Go Tigers in the comments. Let me know where you're watching. Let me know where you're watching from. And of course, I try my best to reply to all of your comments. Let's go! LSU actually caught a big break. Number one, LSU's schedule is backloaded, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but that's how LSU's schedule normally is. They play easier games up front and tougher games at the back. So Ed Orgeron and the Tigers are normally built for schedules like this. You're going to see on this list a metric called aggregate recruiting ranking, which is basically the 4-year average of a team's recruiting class. So you take the national rank of the 2020, 2019, 2018, and 2017 classes, you mash those numbers together, get that average, and if you're a top 10 or top 15 team, that means you're probably within reach of having national championship talent. And yes, of course, there's transfers, there's fifth-year players, but this 4-year number gives us a good idea of how much raw talent is on LSU's schedule. Let's start off, of course, with number 10. It's Vanderbilt. Their raw recruiting ranking is by far the worst in the SEC at 54.25, which is ironic because that's about an average ACC school. And I'm not joking, that's actually true. This game is on the road in week 2. Last year, of course, LSU did blow out Vanderbilt, but they also gave up 38 points. You do feel pretty comfortable for LSU to win this game. And then you have Missouri at number 9. I'm not the biggest fan of Elijah Drinkowitz. I like his offensive schemes, but he's got a huge rebuild ahead of him. 3 on LSU's schedule, so the Tigers of LSU will still be pretty healthy. And then at number 8, you do have Arkansas. It's week 9 on the schedule. It's late in the year. LSU has to play Alabama the week before. Depth becomes a major issue at the end of the season. LSU lost 14 players in the NFL draft. And you're like, well, of course, I already knew that. 14, that's it. It's a record, right? Well, it's not just that. You got to include undrafted free agents. Tack on 6 more of those. And then you have Kerry Vincent Jr., who decided to move on. So LSU down 21 starter or backup level players. That's a big loss. So the later in the schedule it is, the tougher the game gets for an LSU team that lost so much talent. I'm going to put Ole Miss at number 7 because they do have the Egg Bowl the week before in Oxford. That's an emotional game. It's the final week of the year. Ole Miss has a far thinner roster than LSU. Come on, if anyone knows Lane Kiffin, it would be Ed Orgeron, who tried to hire Lane Kiffin to be his offensive coordinator. And you notice something crazy. You look at the aggregate recruiting ranking, it is 29.75. It shows you that Arkansas and Ole Miss have an equivalent amount of talent. And then at number 6, you have South Carolina. A really good aggregate recruiting ranking. So good at 20, Will Muschamp, quite frankly, should have done a better job with this team. Lots of uncertainty at quarterback. Obviously, Ole Miss has John Rice Plumlee, who I feel a little bit better about than what South Carolina's going to throw out there. They do have 5-star Luke Doty that came in, but it does look like it's going to be the Ryan Helinski show. And what's crazy is all of these first 5 games, and the next one we'll talk about, 90% or better win projection. So if LSU loses any of these games, barring massive injury or illness, it would be a disaster. Boom! Boom, boom, boom. I want to shout out you subscribers. We do it every video. And you guys, this last video was our second most popular video all thanks to you. Well, you are building the best LSU deep thought community. Thought is probably not the best word to use there, but you get what I'm saying. Deep LSU discussion. The comment section is always live. Shout out to Rick. He said at 72 years of age, he decided to come on to LSU in large part because he's also from Ohio, much like our sacred son, Joe Burrow. So shout out to you, Rick, and he also shouted out my dear friend T-Bob, so that gives you double points. And also bringing the heat is King Ulysses. That is such a great name. King Ulysses, I need you to explain your name in the comment section. Please do. And of course, we're at 289 subscribers. Let's hit this 300 mark. Remember, when we get to 400, we will start the live shows. Let's get let's get to 1,000 before the season. Why not? Let's go. Moving along here to game number 5. This one's also an ESPN match projection of over 90%. And I feel pretty comfortable about LSU beating Mississippi State. But you don't have a lot of film on Mike Leach. You never know what he's going to do. You've never actually had to face him in the SEC. And of course, everyone's high on KJ Costello, someone else you haven't had to face. A lot of people, including 247, thinks he's a top 5 quarterback in the SEC. Even though I think both the coach and the quarterback are a little overhyped. It is week 1. You never know what's going to happen. And because of that, I put them there at number 5. These top 4 games are on a different level. So much, I'm going to drink a quick sip out of my national championship koozie. Look at that. This is like $4 on Amazon. You got the national championship logo on the back. Michelob Lime Cactus Infusion. Hate me all you want, but this stuff is rather refreshing. Here's the thing about these 4 games, okay? You look at those that we just mentioned, the win projection's over 90%. You should win all of those games. These final 4 get really tough. But I'm going to shock you here at number 4 and say at Florida is the 4th hardest game on the schedule. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, hey, Florida's going to be tough. That's a game we're probably going to lose. Well, so the first 3 weeks, LSU, they're not only going to win, they're going to win big. So the offense is going to be smoothly running. Myles Brennan's going to have a lot of confidence. And remember, playing in the swamp without fans isn't going to be as tough of a battle. The Gators are a little overrated. Now, Kyle Trask is a great story. The 2-star kid, now the Florida quarterback. But he doesn't actually throw the football down the field. Now, Kyle Pitts is a beast of a tight end. But with Stingley out there and the defensive backs, I feel pretty comfortable locking down the outside. Now, Florida's defense, it's always going to be tough. But once again, it's not something that I overly fear. Now, here's the biggest hurdle. Dan Mullen always coaches better against LSU, more so than any coach not named Nick Saban. You remember him at Mississippi State. I mean, you saw the damage he did to the Tigers. But because I think Florida's a little overvalued, I'm going to fade the Gators here. I think LSU gets it done, and the ESPN win projection agrees with me, but it's basically a coin flip at 55-45. ESPN actually agrees with me that Auburn is the tougher game. Bo Nix, we don't know what he's going to look like next year, but his receivers are a problem. Swartz is probably the fastest receiver not named Jalen Waddle. Seth Williams is a huge target that's going to want to get some revenge against an LSU defensive back crew that dominated him last year. Their defense, though, is what gave LSU more trouble than any other defense last year. Why? Well, the defensive line was dominant against LSU. That was the only D-line that could really push back the LSU offensive line. And Clyde and Joe, thanks to some heroic efforts from them, were able to overcome it. But Derrick Brown is gone. A lot of those beasts up front are gone. So even though LSU has a new offensive line, LSU, yes, this is week 6. Yes, this is the 6th game in a row you got to play. But you do get a gimme game against South Carolina the week before. And one more thing why I think Auburn is going to be a little tougher. They have to go to Ole Miss the week before, whereas Florida has to go to Texas A&M the week before. And because of that, I'm going to give Auburn the slight edge, but I still see LSU winning that game. And guess what? I didn't lie to you at the beginning of the video. Alabama is not the toughest game on LSU's schedule. Once again, the first thing that pops out at you, the aggregate recruiting ranking, 2.25. That's a little misleading because, well, that includes the 2017 class at Alabama, and in that class was Jedrick Wills, Jerry Jeudy, Tua, all first-round picks last year. But with that said, they returned Leatherwood, they returned Moses, they returned Devonta Lee, and Mac Jones is a good SEC quarterback. And if he doesn't work out, he's got a 5-star backup. And this is the only game ESPN has LSU losing. LSU gets a bye week before Alabama. So does Alabama. But that does give LSU time to rest in the friendly confines of Baton Rouge, and they could put all of their focus into this game. 42.4% gives Alabama the slight edge. So yeah, this game can legit go either way. In fact, that could be the case against Auburn and Florida. But for right now, I'm going to trust Ed Orgeron to get the job done against Nick Saban, and LSU goes back to back. Let's go. And now, our number one toughest game on LSU's schedule is Texas A&M. Now, every year we overrate the Aggies. Now, here is where things get fun, and this is where deep LSU discussion gets really lively in the comments section below. Now, you're right, I definitely could be overthinking this, but college football comes down to 3 things. The first is talent, and oftentimes people say the next thing is coaching, but that's not entirely true. Your coaching has a huge part in getting your talent because of recruiting, but the second most important thing to talent is your schedule. That's why the SEC schedule release is such a big deal, because when you actually play teams matters so much in college football. And Texas A&M is in fact a top 15 recruiter. Florida, Auburn, and Texas A&M, based on the last 4 years, have essentially identical recruiting classes. So yes, Alabama has a significant talent advantage over Texas A&M. The difference is obviously Texas A&M is in College Station. Texas A&M has more experience at quarterback with Kellen Mond, who played terribly against LSU, but he's experienced. He won that overtime game a few years ago, and your opinion of Kellen Mond could be entirely different than mine. I think he's okay, but I think Jimbo needs to allow him to have a little more freedom. And then, of course, you do have Jimbo Fisher, who, the opinion out there on him is mixed, but still, Jimbo Fisher is a good coach. The biggest difference is not that Texas A&M is on LSU's schedule, it's where. So, before LSU plays Alabama, they're going to be at full strength, as will Alabama, but still, LSU can control their own environment. Texas A&M, it's not the same thing, because the week before Texas A&M, LSU has to go on the road and play Arkansas. Now, I know Arkansas is not a good football team, but they're not a run over like they've been in years past. Sam Pittman is a hard-nosed head coach, which at the very least means that Arkansas is going to play hard, they're going to play physical, and they're not just going to let you roll them over. And one of the biggest untold secrets in the SEC is that it is extremely hard to play back-to-back road games. We talked about this in early episodes, but last year was the first year that LSU had to play back-to-back road games since 2017. And by back-to-back road games, that means you play at one school at their college town and university. In the very next week, you play at another school. Not neutral site games. True back-to-back road games. There's jet lag, weird travel schedules. You have to fly in and get in at 3 in the morning, and then just a few days later, recover your body, have a new game plan, fly back out, and play another football game. Now, the good news is that game is probably going to be at night because Alabama and Auburn, the Iron Bowl, is that week as well. But still, even if that game is during the day or at night, it is hard to fly back-to-back weeks, especially with all this extra testing protocols that's going to happen. Now, remember last year when LSU had to play true back-to-back road games? Well, the Ole Miss game happened where LSU gave up over 600 yards of offense to John Rice Plumlee, which is the most Ole Miss name ever, but still, that was obscene. Why did that happen? Because, yes, they played Alabama the week before, but it was also because you had to go back-to-back on the road. And that's not something coaches are really all that accustomed to. It's actually pretty rare for a Power 5 SEC school to do that. And it's kind of tough because there is so much preparation as far as stretching out the players, taping them up, their recovery, how they actually get prepared. It's really difficult. It can be a cluster. And remember, before the Alabama game, that can kind of sort of be a buffer. It can give you that extra week to get guys healthy. Not only do you have to play Texas A&M in a back-to-back road game setting, that's actually 2 weeks after you play Alabama. And remember, every game matters. So, and Auburn is practically the same way, even though I think Texas A&M's roster is probably a little better. It's just a matter of opinion, but still, that's a really tough spot. And Auburn, yeah, you could have some players really tough it out through 6 weeks, but when you get to week 10 on that schedule, it's difficult. I mean, it's a grind. It is tough. And yeah, I think LSU's up for it. I don't think Texas A&M is more talented than Alabama, but because of where it is, you know, you not only have to focus in on that game, there's another game around the corner you have to get ready for. So yeah, it's tough. And on top of that, Kellen Mond is mobile. And with tired legs, it's really tough to chase a mobile quarterback. Boom! Boom, boom. What do you guys think? Let's have a discussion in the comments section below. Once again, my record's going to stay the same. I have an optimistic 9-1. 8-2 is probably the more rational opinion. Right now, that's where Vegas has LSU. And ultimately, like we said in the last top 5 LSU players video, this comes down to if Myles Brennan is who we say he is. A really good SEC quarterback. I got so many Arik Gilbert comments in my last video. And guess what? A lot of you are highly hyped on him. And I am too. You cannot deny that this is probably the biggest freak athlete LSU's had since Leonard Fournette. But in our next video, we're actually going to do a stat projection. What does history have to say about freshman tight ends, and what does history have to say about Arik Gilbert? So that's coming up in our next video. So yeah, let's have a discussion. I'm not going to lie, I'm really tired, okay? I know I've been a little slow commenting because, we've had all these comments. Our last video did really, really well. This week, I've been filling in for ESPN Radio in South Carolina for my friend Mark Ryan, and doing 3 hours of live radio a day is tough. In fact, I'm recording this episode after today's episode. Some of you have actually been listening to me this week, so I appreciate that. But yeah, I like doing radio, and I was happy to have this opportunity, and hopefully it leads to more radio opportunities. But that doesn't mean I didn't pour a lot of time and research into this piece here. In fact, I've spent 2 nights looking at schedules and win probabilities and rosters. And the Vegas 8-win total, I think, is actually a pretty fair number for LSU next year. Don't forget about sports gyms, okay? Now look. That didn't sound great. Anyway,
This actually came in today and has a little painter's tape here. So I'm going to pull this back. I want you to look at this.
And I know I'm biased because he's one of my favorite Tigers. DJ Chark, rookie card, jersey card. This isn't the most valuable Chark I've bought. I've kind of got addicted to buying DJ Chark cards because I think it looks cool in this Jaguars uniform. But anyway, we got some cool stuff coming up on Sports Gyms, some LSU stuff. So make sure you check out Sports Gyms with Carter Bryant. And always, comment below. Let me know what you think of today's video. And more importantly, share this video with your friends, message boards, any LSU group you're in. It's Power Hour LSU. Who spotted the MJ shirt? Come on. Who spotted it? Boo. 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 Boo.